You're listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, giving you weekly sports analysis, opinions, and discussion. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and J-Raff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 141st episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. J-Raff is off this week on vacation for the next 2 weeks, actually. So filling in tonight for J-Raff is one of our sponsors and my father, Bill.
Hey, good night. Hello, everybody.
We're doing the show a little early this evening because we wanted to just move things along here, make sure we get this in tonight. We don't want to miss a second week in a row. We were off last week due to some other activities, but we wanted to make sure we picked up the slack this evening, and we wanted to be sure that we talk about something that Bill's comfortable with, and we know that that would be football. That is the one thing that that is above all else that consumes the sports talk between me and my father is football. You know, we like baseball, we like the Phillies, you know, we like hockey and the Flyers too, but when it comes down to it, nothing is better than Penn State football and the NFL in general. So that's what we're going to focus on this evening, and we're going to pick up right there with that. But before we dive into it, I guess I'm going to go over how to contact us. This is an interactive show this evening because of the setup. We're not going to be able to take the live calls, but we're still going to be able to, answer your questions, comments, or suggestions. And we have a couple of ways that you can go about doing that. And the best way to probably do that is through the email. You can email us at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. And we have that up during the show, monitoring it at all times. So if you want to send us a question about Penn State football or the upcoming NFL season, again, that's joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. I have it up on the screen if you're watching us on Ustream, joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. Social media is also another good way to contact the show. We have a Facebook fan page. You can like us there. We have that up during the show. And also on Twitter, we have a Twitter account at Joe Mays and J-Raff. We have that up during each episode too. So if you want to contact us this evening, email or social media is the way to go. We won't be taking calls. We don't have a free phone this evening. All right, so that's enough of the introductions and setup and how to contact us. So we're going to dive right in. We're going to start off, we're going to talk a little Penn State football this evening. And that season is quickly approaching. I think we're down to the low 40s in the number of days until we start. And that obviously is going to be on Saturday, August 30th. Pretty much just a few hours after sunrise here on the East Coast, because Penn State is going to take on Central Florida in the Croke Park Classic over in Ireland. It was set up by the former regime at Penn State with Bill O'Brien, and it made a lot of sense to have O'Brien versus O'Leary in Ireland. But as new coach James Franklin has mentioned, his name's not O'Franklin. It's not exactly an Irishman showdown anymore. But the Penn State faithful are definitely excited to see their Nittany Lions play Central Florida in Ireland. And that's Saturday, August 30th, and I believe it kicks off at 8 in the morning.
8 o'clock kickoff.
So that'll be interesting, tailgating around the state of Pennsylvania, across the country, of people having parties at their house, consuming probably some adult beverages pretty early in the morning, something that isn't seen that often. And I'm sure the Croke Park Classic will be sold out over there. It's an interesting event. They're in, not sure the number of years they've been doing it now, but it's not just limited to the Penn State UCF game. There's actually a high school game going on, and with Penn State featuring prominently. The people that are in charge of the Croke Park Classic have chosen 2 Pennsylvania football teams to compete as well the night before the Penn State UCF game, and they actually chose the Lancaster Lebanon foe of Wilson, Penn Manor, and also used to be a familiar coaching face at Cedar Cliff, Jim Catafio. Now he moved on from Cedar Cliff, so Penn Manor, Cedar Cliff will be facing off in the high school version of the Ireland Showdown this year. I know we've both talked about this. We would have loved to have them selected Wilson.
Yeah.
It would have been really cool to have our alma mater head over there. I would have loved to have been able to join them over there running the the account for both Twitter and Facebook, the Wilson account. I would have made sure I secured my way over there and chronicled it for everyone that couldn't be there. But alas, Wilson wasn't selected, so I will not be heading to Ireland to see both Wilson and Penn State play. The night before the Penn State UCF game in Ireland is actually the kickoff of the high school football season, and we will see Wilson host rival Governor Mifflin on Friday, August 29th. So it's a big weekend. You know, you're starting football in general, which is always pretty much the best weekend of the year. You have Wilson Mifflin Friday night. You have Penn State UCF in Ireland Saturday, and then I think a week later is going to be NFL action. So it's coming upon us pretty quickly, and I know neither of us could be any more excited for football to be back.
And fantasy football.
Yes, fantasy football will be coming as well, and I know we'll be having our draft in just about a month. We have our draft scheduled for August 24th, where both of us hope to take down my normal co-host in J-Raff, who now has won it 2 of the last 3 years. And he holds a lot of bragging rights recently, as both of us have been shut out now for a number of years. It hurts a little bit to recognize the failures of the State College Bulldogs and the Slick Willie's Cowboys. But I think your problem is coaching.
Oh, is that right?
I think that's right. You know, I think you got the ownership locked down, but the coach that you're there, you know, it's not. I'm not sure the coaching is getting it done for you.
Well, he's been on the hot bubble recently, so I've talked to him about it, and I said you gotta put it through this year. I mean, what really hurt us last year was we lost Rodgers halfway through the season, and we were doing very good until then. But we don't want JRaff to win it, and we don't want your Uncle Rich to win it again.
Yeah, they've actually they've won it the last 3 years. Justin won it 2 years ago. 3 years ago now. Uncle Rich 2 years ago, and Justin last year. And they actually faced each other last year for the title. So it's interesting to see those guys go back and forth. And Uncle Rich, he was extended an invite to participate on the show tonight, but he had to head back to Massachusetts, so he missed out on that opportunity. But he's been on the show before. So, anyways, back to Penn State. We're getting emails about NFL talk, so we want to get to that. I want to finish the Penn State talk before we get an email from a new listener, a first-time emailer. So I want to make sure that we touch on that when we get to the NFL stuff. But first, back to the Penn State. Now, we've been in the James Franklin era. It seems like it's been a long time. It's only been since January, and we actually haven't seen him coach in a real game for Penn State yet. But the hype is absolutely unbelievable, mostly because of what he's been able to do in recruiting. I've never seen a Penn State class get this much hype so early. Penn State's had some decent classes. They actually had a couple good classes in the 2000s, actually, while I was a student with Joe Paterno at the helm. You know, that 2005 class with Derek Williams, Justin King, that heralded group of freshmen. That was a pretty decent class. I think the 2008 class was also a very good one statistically, you know, in the rankings, if you go by the stars that Rivals and ESPN and all those guys do. But this one has a chance to be quite possibly the greatest ever in the modern era. Now, obviously, there's been recruiting. There's been recruiting as long as there's been college football, but there hasn't been this recruiting stuff since the last probably 20 years or so. So those teams that Joe Paterno had, great teams in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there wasn't that much ballyhoo about stars. How many 5-star or 4-star recruits did you get? Well, I can tell you right now that Penn State has, I believe it's 18 commitments into the class of 2015, which will not sign until February. 11 of them, I think, if might be more, are a 4-star. In the last 3 classes combined for Penn State, they've had 11. So in this one single recruiting cycle that James Franklin is in for the Penn State, they have as many verbal commitments as they had signees, 4 stars the last 3 recruiting classes. So he's obviously doing something right, but we knew that. He was hyped up coming out of Vanderbilt for his recruiting prowess. He's an incredible motivational speaker. People have questioned some of his game decisions. We can't really comment on that yet. We haven't seen him coach a game. But I just kind of want to get a perspective from you, just like me, a fan. What do you think of Franklin so far?
And like you said, it's too early to say because we haven't seen him coach any games yet. But his recruiting, I mean, like Joey was touching on about the 4 stars, they landed 2 again yesterday. One for the 2015 season and one for the 2016 season. Already for 2016, it's a 4-star. I'm anxious to see. Joey and I will both be at the opening game up at State College. We were there 2 years ago to watch Bill O'Brien's first game, and
unfortunately, he lost to Ohio that game, though.
But just things I've seen and watched. I'm very impressed. I was worried once Bill O'Brien left, what was going to happen and where we go. But the people that took care of replacing Bill O'Brien, I think they've done a great job there. Bill O'Brien, I know we don't want to talk about him a lot, but I mean, he got us through the first two toughest. I always said when this all came down that the first 2 years were going to be the toughest, and all the analysts said our program was going to be dead.
Yeah, they definitely were hyping that up.
And we've come through the first 2 years. I feel in great shape, and now we can just build on that. And with some of these sanctions coming off, who knows? Maybe this fall they'll lift the bowl sanction, and we could be even going to a bowl.
Yeah, I know. Last year, when Air Emmert and the College Football Oversight Committee, the NCAA czar and all those guys, when they came out and they reduced the sanctions, everyone was happy to see the scholarships come back in some form over the next few years. Now the next one, people don't seem to care about the money. Whatever. The fine is the fine. We're over that. We want the scholarships, and now we want the bowl game. These kids have earned it. These kids have done nothing in regard to everything that happened 3 years ago. So we're hoping, former Senator George Mitchell, who has sung nothing but the praises of Penn State administration, he's been the head of this now for over 2 years. He started in July 2012. He's been overseeing Penn State compliance for the last 2 years as appointed by Mark Emmert. And he had another glowing review last year. It was early September when it was made known that some of the sanctions would be reduced. And I know this year a lot of Penn State people are very, very hopeful that the NCAA will reduce the sanctions again. And even if they wouldn't reduce the bowl ban this year, the third year that we're going into, if they at least get rid of it next year, that should increase recruiting even more, because now you can actually say, hey, the first year you're on the team, we can go to a bowl game.
Right.
And I'm sure with James Franklin, we will go to a bowl game. We will go to a great bowl game, because that's the type of guy he is. I saw James Franklin speak at a coach's clinic, and he was everything that people said he was. He's an incredibly motivational guy. His speaking is better than a lot of coaches I've seen before. A lot of coaches aren't into the public speaking. I know I don't like to do it. And, a lot of it can be a little dry. He was very upfront. He was very excited. He was happy to be there. He was very great with everyone afterwards, signing autographs and talking and mingling with all the coaches, and it was great to see. So the Franklin era is off to a good start, but again, none of it will matter if they don't win.
Right.
And I think both of us are kind of in agreement. We think Penn State should, over-under, we'd place at, I guess it should be placed at about 7.5 wins. And we both think over. I think we're both thinking about 8 and 4.
Right. That's where I was leaning right now. And to more or less cover more of what you were saying is with, when Bill O'Brien came, everybody knew it was for the short term, if you want to say that. We were hoping, Joey and I were both hoping we could get through the 4 years. But after the first season, when there was talk about him leaving, I really got worried. But the new coach, he wants to be there. He, like Joey told me, he wanted to. He drove his family up, if I remember you said, and he told his wife this was his dream job.
Right, he's a local kid, Yep. He said it. I'm a Pennsylvania boy with a Penn State heart. He went to East Stroudsburg. He actually played around the time that Wilson's current offensive coordinator Jeremy Palm was there. So he's in the familiar territory. I remember the story a month or so after he got the job that he was driving with some of his assistants and he just turned around and hit him and was like, "Can you believe we're coaching at Penn State?" Because he's just that excited. He says that this is a dream job. This is there's nothing better. I mean, arguments can be said about the NFL. Could he make the jump to the NFL like O'Brien? He probably could. But if he's being sincere about Penn State being his dream job, why would you? And a lot of people say, well, you'd like to see if you can tackle the challenge to be the best of the best. But professional, or I shouldn't say professional, at least not yet, major college football at times can be more, energetic than the NFL. The NFL is a business. College football is not supposed to be a business. Now, I know there's a business side of things, and that could drastically change over the next few years. But this coming season, we get to finally introduce a small college playoff between the top 4 teams. So that'll be interesting. Obviously, Penn State's ineligible at this moment, and I highly doubt they'd be able to crack the top 4 this year. But if Franklin continues to recruit the way he does and be able to be able to make some accomplishments on the field in a couple of years, even despite the sanctions and what happened in the past, Penn State could be destined to be a powerful college football team. I've actually seen mainstream media sources write about the next 10 years of college football, who are the best 10 teams, and Penn State's been in that because they bought into the hype. They believe in James Franklin and what he can do. So before we move on to the NFL, because I know that's a lot of what we want to talk about the rest of the next 20-30 minutes or so, I do want to show a little Penn State video to everyone. So we're going to transition to that right now and enjoy a couple minutes of a Penn State hype video.
Exclusive. Okay, so that was a fan-made 2014 pump-up video for Penn State football. So it'll be interesting to see when the ones that Penn State actually produces comes out, because they're always interesting. Some of my favorite ones happened in the 2000s. I know Nick and I loved the Gladiator one. That was always a staple. I'm not sure they play that one anymore, but that was always a great one. So, but anything else you want to add about Penn State before we talk a little NFL here?
Go Lions.
Yeah, go Penn State. Like my dad said, we'll be there September 6th, the first Saturday of the month, in State College, Beaver Stadium, for the first home game of the James Franklin era, and hopefully it starts off better than the O'Brien era, and hopefully it's puts the Lions at 2-0 and beat UCF and then take down Akron. So that is what's coming up for Penn State. Now we're going to move on and talk a little bit NFL football here this evening. I think before we get into anything that we were going to talk about, though, I think we should probably answer this email that we got here. And this one starts off, Bill and Joe, first-time listener, long-time supporter of the Mays family. What do you guys think the Eagles' chances will be this year given the success Chip Kelly had last year? Joey, being a football coach like you are, do you think it's a good move to let Deshaun Jackson go if he was someone causing problems in the locker room? Thanks, guys. Let me know if I can be a guest sometime. My qualifications are play-by-play for Wilson basketball game. And this is from Zach. I graduated with him. Good guy. I actually sat with him at graduation. I've known him for a long time. He used to be one of our Halo buddies. So,
he wasn't very good in touch football.
No, he wasn't a good football player.
I'm sure I'm going to hear about that.
So, yes, thank you for the email, Zach. Appreciate it. We'll tackle a couple of these questions here. First, I'll start at the bottom. Yes, I would actually love to have you on as a guest sometime, Zach. That would be great. It's always awesome to have some new people on. Always cover different angles and get different opinions of stuff. So I'll have to be in touch with you. Sometime we can fill in for Justin, or we can have you on with the both of us. We can definitely do that. I think, why don't I tackle the Deshaun Jackson locker room stuff first, and then we'll get into a little bit of our Eagles predictions here, as I figured we'd have to tackle that on this show at some point. So, as a football coach now, I just do middle school, so the drama isn't as intense as I'm sure it isn't as an NFL locker room where it's coming down to money, whereas in middle school you don't have to worry about that so much. But I think the game of football is, in essence, simple, that it comes down to just people playing a game. And that can be related to at any point, whether it's professional or little league. And when you have someone that's causing trouble with the other people in this cog in this machine, just a cog in this machine is disrupting it, it has to be removed. It has to be changed. And if Deshaun Jackson reportedly was causing issues, now they don't seem to be as stratospheric as the Terrell Owens stuff was. But if there was stuff going on in the locker room, or stuff they were afraid of outside the locker room of him bringing it into the Eagles organization, it was time to cut the bait. It was time to move on. And they did just that. If you have someone who doesn't get along with a coach who, in some organizations, is the head guy, obviously it's all with the owner, but generally he has very little football knowledge. You know all about that in Dallas. But you sometimes will have a general manager. In some cases, the coach and the general manager could be the same person. Now, I know it's not like that in Philly, but in Philly, you generally have the ownership group, a front office guy, and then the coach. So Chip Kelly's pretty high up there. He was selected by the general manager. If Chip Kelly goes to Howie Roseman, is that right? No, I don't remember. Now I'm second-guessing myself. But anyways, to the Eagles general manager or head of the football operations and says, I'm having trouble with this guy, you brought in that coach. Why would you say no, he's staying, and upset the guy that you brought in to run the team? And obviously, it was a successful first season. The Eagles did something that Justin and I said they couldn't do. The Eagles were the only team in our NFC East preview last year that we said would not have the chance to win the NFC East. And what did they do? They won the NFC East, making us look like two idiots. But if Deshaun Jackson wasn't in Chip Kelly's plan, if he thought he could go out and find guys that could produce the same amount that he did, even if it's spread out over a couple of guys, if he convinced the general manager of that, obviously he must have, because Deshaun Jackson's gone. And, of course, now he's with rival Washington. But that's always a dumpster fire down there, so I'm not sure how that might start out strong, but I don't see it ending well. Deshaun Jackson's a diva. He's not someone that I'd want in my locker room as a coach. We've had little stuff happen over at Little Wilson West where you just got to take care of it, and that's what our head coach does. You take care of it, you remove it, you talk with the parents or you talk with the kid, but you put an end to it because the team comes before everyone else. It's cliche, but there's no I in team. You need to remove yourself from the equation because you're not helping us. And that's what happens in Little League, in middle school, in high school, college, and up to the pros. And I think Chip Kelly and the Eagles did what they needed to do. If the Eagles struggle this year, a lot of people are going to question the move. But I don't think they're going to struggle. I think they're going to be as good, if not better, in the 2014 season.
Yeah, I just think Chip Kelly, he's the captain of the boat, and he doesn't I don't think Jackson fit into his plans, and I think it was a bold move, but I think it was the right move. And like Joey said, he might start right down Washington, but Chip Kelly wants to be the boss and everybody to know it, and there's nothing wrong with that because I think that's the way it should be. But I think for the Eagles, I think they're gonna do all right after he's gone. I don't really think they're gonna miss him.
Well, they have Jeremy Maclin back from injury. He was out last year with I believe torn ACL, so he missed the entire season. He's back on a 1-year deal. They signed Riley Cooper to a long deal. They drafted Jordan Matthews from Vanderbilt. He's supposed to be turning heads. They have Selleck and Ertz at tight end, not to mention Casey. They have a great offensive line. Their defense is coming along. It was much better last year than people expected. They signed a couple free agents, drafted a couple key guys. It really, and this is, the way it is around the league. You're only going to go as far as your quarterback can take you. Can Nick Foles replicate what he did in 2013? If he can be almost as good or better, the Eagles are going to go far. Now, can I say that they're going to be NFC champions in the Super Bowl? It's a possibility, but it all comes down to Foles, because I think the rest is in place to win the division and make some noise in the playoffs. If Foles is the same way he was last year, you could easily see an NFC title game berth. If he's better, you could see a Super Bowl berth.
It depends.
But if he's a little worse,
depends.
maybe you're getting challenged for the division. Now, I think the NFC East could be pretty terrible this year. I think the Eagles are the cream of the crop. I don't like what Dallas has done. It's hard to say with Washington. It kind of, again, quarterback, what's RG3 going to do? What can he do for them? The Giants are a bit of a mystery team. I think that there's potential there for them to challenge. I don't think Eli Manning is as bad as he played last year. I think Tom Coughlin's a better coach than what was shown last year. They were ravaged by injuries throughout. But did they get better enough in the offseason to challenge the Eagles? I don't know. It's interesting. I think for once that the NFC East, despite the media wanting to talk about them because they generate ratings, I think this could be a bit of a down year, and the Eagles might have to carry the torch for the division this year. It's one of the most storied divisions in all of football, with 4 incredibly talented organizations over the last 4 or 5 decades. And one that people love to talk about. It's hard to top the rivalries of those 4 teams. And I know you've been involved in it your entire life, being a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, it pains me, but I did say to Eagle friends of mine, I said, I'm not jumping off the Cowboy bandwagon, but I do sort of like Chip Kelly. And I really do feel it's Eagles division to lose, because Dallas hasn't done anything to help themselves, and as long as we have that owner, I've been critical of him my whole life. Well, as long as he's been there, I should say.
A long time, though.
A long time, and I wish we had
someone
Eagles,
like Chip Kelly.
I wish we had the Eagles owner, where he stands back and lets his coach do what he needs to do. And we don't have that down in Dallas, and I wish we did. But I think it's. I won't say the Eagles are going to run away with it, but depending what happens with the Giants, I think they're the only ones that could really give them a run for it, and it could end up that the Eagles could be a 3-game at the end of the year lead on everybody in the division. I just don't expect much from the other 3 right now.
Now, I think it was 2 weeks ago when Justin was here with me, we went over the Eagles' schedule. The last thing we did, we ran down the schedule. And we both pretty much agreed that we thought if you're going to say over-under, I'd peg it at about 10 wins. Because we both landed at 10-6. He surprised me with a few that he thought would be losses, but then he surprised me with a few he thought would be wins. And we traded things around, but we pretty much settled. The Eagles should probably be about 10-6. That should be good enough for a playoff spot, whether or not they win the division or it's a wild card. But they could, depending on how Foles plays and how good the rest of the division is, they could be a 12 or 13 win team. I don't think they're going to lose more than 7, which means I think their basement is 9 wins. I think they're better than 500, but I could see their ceiling is much higher. I'm going to stay safe at 10-6 for now. We'll see how training camp goes and the mostly meaningless preseason games go. But you got to factor in injuries from around the league and what rookies are stepping up. But I think at a minimum the Eagles are a 10-6 team, NFC East champions, and I think they're as good as probably any other team out there. And I know a lot of people will hype up the 49ers and Seahawks again this year, but it's hard to stay on top for a while. Other than New England, what team stays all the way at the top of their division and a playoff force other than the Patriots? Every team, I mean, the Eagles went through it. They were a great team for a while, but then they struggled for a few. The Steelers, back and forth, they've been struggling the last few years. It's hard to be up there for a number of years. So the Seahawks are, going to come into money issues with all their young guys wanting contracts. They're already starting to dole out money. Can they do it again? I never was a Seahawks believer last year until that blowout in the Super Bowl. So they proved me wrong, but it took them, however many games that was, 19, 20 games for them to prove me wrong or to make me a believer. They had to show Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll raising the Lombardi Trophy. Will another team come out of nowhere where they knock the Seahawks off the perch? I absolutely believe that because I don't see the Seahawks repeating. And could it be the Eagles will be another bird? Possibly. But we're going to talk our NFL preview with Justin when he gets back in 2 weeks. We're going to start our division-by-division previews. So we'll go through all of that before the NFL season kicks off. But thank you, Zach, for the email. I hope we enlighten you a little bit on our opinions of the Eagles and the Chip Kelly last year, as well as the Deshaun Jackson situation. And I'll definitely be hitting you up with talk about coming on the show sometime.
The only other thing I have to add to that is, like Joey said, is quarterback position and injuries. That's the only thing I could see the Eagles not having like 11 wins or better this year.
Now, I actually have a text from Justin.
Oh, geez.
It's not that bad. It could have been bad, but he's okay. It's actually a real question for you, or for us. He says, with Tony Romo coming off of back surgery, what are our thoughts on the releasing of backup quarterback Kyle Orton? Justin does not believe it's a factor at all. I guess you're looking at, was it important to keep a veteran like Orton around if Tony Romo was struggling in his recovery or wasn't back to 100%? Was Orton really the guy to take Dallas places? Well, first off, I'm going to say I don't think Dallas is going anywhere this year. No. I was high on them the last few seasons, with the beginning of Garrett, and I'm always a supporter of Tony Romo. I think he's massively underhyped in the sense of his athletic ability. He gets overhyped because he's the Cowboys starting quarterback, but his slice of bread could be the Cowboys starting quarterback and he'd be the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's just the way that it goes being the Cowboys starting quarterback. Everyone hates you or everyone loves you. It's just the way that it is. In my opinion, Tony Romo is underrated as a starting quarterback. But the Cowboys' problems aren't the quarterback position to me. No. It's everything else. They had a terrible defense last year. They struggled to get a competent running game going. And they let go of Miles Austin, and the receiving group is changing over. Jason Garrett's clearly on the hot seat this year. So I don't think it's a huge factor, the releasing of Kyle Orton. Maybe it's a vote of confidence, Tony Romo, and his health. But was Kyle Orton really going to do anything more for Dallas than Tony Romo was, even if Tony Romo is only at 75%? I don't think so. I agree with Justin. I think it's a non-factor overall.
Right. Unless he's hurt, he will be playing. Justin, you'll be happy. I don't see Dallas winning more than 7 games.
7?
So, yeah.
Yeah, they've been right in that, hovering close to 500 for a number of years now. And you got to think that if they do only get to 7 or less, you have to believe that Garrett's gone.
And it's a shame. It's not all his fault.
It's not all his fault, no.
It's the owner.
No, it's not as though the Cowboys are without a veteran on their roster to take over for Romo in case something would flare up with his back. He gave up golf, though. He isn't playing his golf because of his back. So I'm confident that Romo will be ready to start the season and should be able to play for the duration of it. But even with the release of Orton, they still have Caleb Haney and Brandon Weeden. Both have started games in this league. Caleb Haney was a long-time Bears backup, and he filled in a couple years ago with injuries to whoever there was it Cutler then? I can't remember. Possibly for Jay Cutler. And then they also have a first-round bust from the Browns, Brandon Weeden. They brought him in this year after just a couple years with the Browns. He's now in Dallas. And Orton was given the pink slip. He was somewhat holding out or contemplating retirement and not showing up. And they just kind of were like, see ya. So that was the end of the Orton era in Dallas. But if Romo's out, it comes down to Haney and Weeden. Who knows what's going to happen there? But while Tony Romo is maybe worth a win or two, those guys clearly are not. But what's the difference if you're going to win 7 games or 5 games? Honestly, and Justin and I have had this conversation on numerous occasions. If the Cowboys are going to be bad and they need young talent and a better draft pick, it's almost better that Romo not play. And, I don't want to say tank the whole season, but if Romo gets injured and you have to start Haney or Whedon for a couple games and you lose, it's better to be bad than average. You don't want to be 6-10 to 10-6. You want to be 5-11 or worse, or 11-5 and better. I mean, if you're 10-6 and make the playoffs, obviously that's okay. But you don't want to be 10-6 and not make the playoffs because you're not in the playoffs and you have a crappy draft pick.
Right.
So if you're 5-11 or worse, you're picking in the top 10, top 8. But if you get to 7-9, 8-8, 9-7, where your Cowboys and my Dolphins have been far too off in the last few years, you're in the worst of both worlds. No playoffs, mediocre mid-round draft pick, mid-range first. Then you got to move up or move back, and it's almost better that if the Cowboys are going to be bad and Romo gets injured, it's almost better for them to say, get healthy for next year, we'll come back stronger, maybe we'll be out of salary cap hell, and maybe we'll have a good draft pick that we can come in and make, an impact right away. So we'll see what happens with the Cowboys, but we thank Justin for that question while he's on vacation this week. So is there something else you want to touch on in the NFL?
I guess the only other thing would be the Patriots, I guess.
You want to talk a little Patriots?
And Denver. I mean, the Super Bowl last year, you had Denver. I think we both expected Denver to win.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know of anybody that wasn't shocked with that outcome.
I shouldn't say that people were shocked Seattle won. I think they were shocked that they won by that amount.
Like it turned out, right. I mean, they completely shut down the Denver team, their offense.
Everything. Defense couldn't do anything, and Manning and
started with the first play of the game.
Yeah, it was a beatdown. But I think you're saying you want to talk AFC top dogs, and you're thinking, do you think it'll be New England, Denver?
It has to be. I mean, I can't think of anybody.
So you're not a Cincinnati, Baltimore fan? Anyone in the AFC North?
No, Cincinnati's got to prove it to me, and I just don't. I don't see Baltimore. So I just think in the AFC it's Denver and New England again.
Now, what about
New England?
Do you like Indianapolis at all?
They're an upcoming possible star, but
You think it's Denver or New England? If you had the chance of taking 14 AFC teams, or you got both Denver and New England, you'd take Denver and New England over the AFC field.
Absolutely.
Okay, I can't say I disagree with you. I don't know if I'm ready quite yet to say I would take that as well.
Denver's really in the off season.
Seattle burned me in this that I didn't believe in them last year, and I've been burned recently by Cincinnati and believing too much in them. If they're going to do anything, I think it has to be this year. So I'm still interested in Cincinnati. I'm not going to say that they're definitely better than Denver or New England, but I still like Cincinnati. I think Baltimore could have a bounce back year if they can stop getting arrested, and I think that it's hard to say about Indianapolis. I think too many people believe in the hype around Andrew Luck and that he's like the second coming of Manning. I think he's going to be very good. I mean, he's already a good quarterback, but I think he's not ready to carry the load like Manning was. And I don't know if Indianapolis has enough on defense or offensive weapons to carry them past New England and Denver, or Cincinnati for that matter. A team that I am very interested in, I know we don't want to talk about him, but the Texans have a lot of talent. And Bill O'Brien being down there, even though they have quarterback issues, they traded Schaub to Oakland. You have a bunch of journeymen and young guys down there competing for the spot. If Bill O'Brien can do wonders with Matt McGloin, what can he do with guys that were drafted in the NFL, have started games? Ryan Fitzpatrick's down there. He started for both St. Louis and Buffalo. He's been on numerous NFL rosters. He got a big contract from the Bills a few years ago. He has talent. If O'Brien can bring it out of him and surround him with Arian Foster and that defense, who's to say Houston can't go from worst to first in that division?
Absolutely. I mean, because there's a lot of people picking them in the Super Bowl last year.
Right. I mean, they have the talent. Now, Andre Johnson is being, head case right now and holding out and saying he doesn't want to play. But they drafted DeAndre Hopkins last year, and he had an up and down year, but that's expected from a rookie wide receiver. They have the talent down there. They have an incredible defense. You're led by J.J. Watt. They just added Jadeveon Clowney, one of the freakest college athletes in a long time. When we did the NFL draft preview, we showed you that clip from when he played Michigan and he took the head off of that guy in the tackle in the bowl game. So they have him down there with J.J. Watt. That is a nightmare for offensive lines and quarterbacks. So I honestly think that, Jacksonville and Tennessee are just there. I honestly think it comes down to Indianapolis, Houston, which is crazy to think Houston had the number 1 pick and they could be competing for that division, but I definitely believe it. And we'll find out in a couple weeks when Justin and I go over the South divisions.
I'd say going with the. I know you want to wrap up. I would say the NFC. Something's telling me watch New Orleans.
You like New Orleans?
New Orleans, besides the normal.
Besides Seattle, San Francisco.
Right.
What about the North? Quickly, Green Bay, Minnesota.
As long as they can
Detroit.
you saw what happened without Rodgers.
You like the Packers.
If Rodgers stays healthy, I don't see anybody taking Green Bay down.
So you like the recent favorites, and the Eagles in the East, the Saints in the South, probably Seahawks, 49ers in the West, and then probably a healthy Rodgers and the Packers in the North. Those are the ones you're leaning to.
That's what I'm leaning to right now. They're gonna have to prove me. I mean, there's always surprises, but to see, I would not be surprised to see New Orleans in the Super Bowl.
All right. Well, that's good. Hey, that's fine. Absolutely. Throw that out there. So, New Orleans, Denver, or New Orleans, New England?
I think Denver's done some pretty good pickups in the offseason. So, right now,
they're in it to win it now. Absolutely.
Right. I would say Denver, possibly New Orleans.
I'd like to see that. I'd like to see Manning against Breeze again. Breeze got the better of Manning in Indianapolis, 5 years ago or so? I'd love to see them duke it out. That'd be a great game. I would love to see it. And we'll find out in a couple weeks what Justin and I think. But before we go, I got another video I want to pass along. This is an NFL pump-up video.
I don't know what to say, really. 3 minutes to the biggest battle of our professional lives. All comes down to today. Either we heal as a team, or we're going to crumble. Inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished. We're in hell right now, gentlemen. Believe me. And we can stay here, or we can fight our way back into the light. We can climb out of hell. 1 inch at a time. Now, I can't do it for you. I'm too old. When you get old in life, things get taken from you. I mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, 1/2 a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. Hell yeah. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. On this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw with our fingernails for that inch. Because we know when we add up all those inches, that's gonna make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying. I'll tell you this, in any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's gonna win that inch. And I know if I'm gonna have any life anymore, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that itch. Because that's what living is.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
All right, so that was a little NFL pump-up video for you. I hope you enjoyed it. It's an interesting one. It's the speech from Al Pacino in Any Given Sunday. It's an interesting movie, but seeing it thrown to NFL highlights is always fun to take part in. So that's a good one. We wanted to make sure that you saw that as well. So saw Penn State, talked a little NFL. Good things coming up with football on the horizon. Very, very excited for that. But I think that's about time that we probably wrap up this show. Thank you, Dad, for joining me. It was fun.
Thank you. Also, go Bulldogs.
Yeah, go Penn State, go Wilson, and I want to see a fun and entertaining NFL season. That's what I want. With fantasy rapidly approaching, it's just the best time of the year is upon us. So very, very excited for that. All right, so I think that's everything here. Thanks for joining us. That wraps up the 141st episode of the Joe Mays and JRaff Show. I'm Joe Mays, and you are?
Bill Mays.
Thanks for listening to us, everyone. Good night.
Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and JRaff Show. Don't forget, you can download each episode of the show from the podcast section of the iTunes Store. We'll see you next time, and thanks again for listening.